Long ago, in the ancient land of Israel, there lived a young boy named David. He was the youngest of 8 sons in the family of Jesse, a humble farmer from Bethlehem. While David's older brothers were tall, strong men, often busy with work or serving in the army, David was different. He was small and gentle, with a heart full of love for God. He spent his days in the fields, caring for his father's sheep, playing his harp, and singing songs of praise. David's music was so beautiful that it was said even the stars seemed to dance to his melodies. David's life as a shepherd might have seemed ordinary, but in those quiet moments in the fields, God was preparing him for something extraordinary. David wasn't just a shepherd, he was a protector. Many times, wild animals like lions and bears would come to attack the sheep. But each time, David would bravely fight them off, trusting not in his strength, but in God's. And every time, God gave him the victory. Meanwhile, trouble was brewing in the land of Israel. The Philistines, a fierce and warlike people, were gathering their armies to fight against Israel. The Philistines had a secret weapon, a giant named Goliath. Goliath was a warrior like no other, standing over 9 feet tall, wearing armor as heavy as a grown man, and carrying a spear so large that it took great strength just to lift it. Every day, Goliath would step out from the Philistine ranks and shout across the valley to the Israelites, daring them to send out a champion to fight him.
Why do you come out and line up for battle?
Goliath would roar.
Am I not a Philistine, and are you not the servants of Saul? Choose a man and have him come down to me. If he is able to fight and kill me, we will become your subjects. But if I overcome him and kill him, you will become our subjects and serve us.
For 40 days, Goliath taunted the Israelites, and every day the Israelite soldiers trembled in fear. No one dared to face the giant. Now David's older brothers were among the soldiers in King Saul's army. One day, David's father Jesse asked him to take some food to his brothers and check on them. Eager to see the battle, David set out early the next morning, leaving the sheep with another shepherd. When he arrived at the camp, he found the soldiers in the middle of their daily routine of preparing for battle, only to fall back in fear as Goliath stepped forward once again. As David handed out the food to his brothers, he heard Goliath's booming voice echoing through the valley. He watched in amazement as the soldiers of Israel shrank back.
Why isn't anyone doing anything?
David asked, his voice filled with disbelief. His brothers tried to hush him, embarrassed that their little brother was witnessing their fear.
Be quiet, David.
They scolded, their faces flushed with shame. But David couldn't stay quiet.
Who is this Philistine that he should defy the armies of the living God?
David exclaimed, his voice strong and unwavering. The soldiers nearby were astonished. How could a mere boy speak so boldly? David's brothers were angry with him.
What are you doing here? You're supposed to be watching the sheep. You're just here to watch the battle.
They scolded him, their voices harsh with frustration. But David wasn't just curious. He was concerned. He couldn't understand why the men of Israel were so afraid when they had God on their side. Word of David's questions soon reached King Saul, and the king sent for him. When David was brought before the king, Saul was surprised by his youthfulness.
Let no one lose heart on account of this Philistine.
David said confidently, his eyes shining with determination. Your servant will go and fight him. Saul looked at David with concern, his brow furrowed in doubt.
You are not able to go out against this Philistine and fight him. You are only a young man, and he has been a warrior from his youth.
Saul replied, his voice tinged with worry. But David was undeterred. He told Saul about his experiences as a shepherd, how he had fought off lions and bears to protect his flock. David declared, his voice filled with unwavering faith. Seeing David's steadfast belief, Saul agreed to let him fight Goliath, though he offered his own armor to David. But when David tried it on, it was much too big and cumbersome. He could barely move in it.
I cannot go in these, David said, shaking his head as he took off the armor.
Instead, David chose to face Goliath with what he knew best. He took his shepherd's staff, his sling, and selected 5 smooth stones from a nearby stream. With his simple weapons in hand, David approached the battlefield. As he drew near, Goliath looked down and saw that Israel had sent a boy to fight him. He was furious.
Am I a dog that you come at me with sticks?
Goliath sneered, his voice dripping with contempt. He cursed David by his gods and said,
Come here, and I'll give your flesh to the birds and the wild animals.
But David was not intimidated. He looked up at the giant, his eyes blazing with courage, and replied,
You come against me with sword and spear and javelin, but I come against you in the name of the Lord Almighty, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied. This day the Lord will deliver you into my hands, and I'll strike you down and cut off your head. And the whole world will know that there is a God in Israel."
Goliath, enraged, began to move toward David, his massive form looming over the battlefield. But David was quick. He ran toward the giant, reaching into his bag for a stone. With a swift motion, he placed the stone in his sling and swung it around, faster and faster, until he released it. The stone flew through the air with incredible speed and struck Goliath right in the forehead. The giant's eyes widened in shock as he stumbled and fell to the ground with a thunderous crash. Goliath was dead. The Philistine army was stunned. Their great champion had been defeated by a mere boy. Panic spread through their ranks and they turned to flee. The Israelite soldiers, emboldened by David's victory, surged forward and chased the Philistines, winning a great victory that day. David became a hero in Israel, not because of his strength or size, but because of his faith in God. He knew that it wasn't his own power that had brought down Goliath, but the power of God working through him. As David grew older, he would go on to face many more challenges and battles, eventually becoming one of Israel's greatest kings. But he never forgot the lesson he learned that day on the battlefield, that with faith, even the smallest and weakest can overcome the greatest challenges. And so, the story of David and Goliath has been told for generations, reminding us that no matter how big our problems may seem, we can face them with courage and faith, knowing that God is always with us.